Europe is tense as secret Kremlin talks fall apart, pushing Washington, Kyiv and Moscow toward a dangerous crossroads. Russia issues veiled threats, Ukraine hits deeper inside enemy territory, and shadow tankers burn in the Black Sea. A key NATO hub becomes the lifeline of an entire region, while diplomats race between capitals and global power shifts accelerate. What is Russia hiding? What is the US planning? And why is Europe suddenly moving so fast? Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Vladimir Putin rejected the peace proposal put forward by the United States and Ukraine during a meeting with US delegation in Moscow, and he's unlikely to agree to any compromises other than his original war aims, according to the American Institute for the Study of War, which commented on the outcome of the talks in its report. Analysts also noted the Kremlin statement that the US and Russian delegations agreed not to disclose the substance of the negotiations.
This aligns with ISW's earlier assessments that the Kremlin intends to avoid publicly discussing the outcomes of the meeting in order to conceal Russia's rejection of the US-Ukrainian peace proposal. Senior Kremlin officials, including Putin, have consistently dismissed the 28-point peace plan and its subsequent iterations since they first emerged in mid-November 2025, as these proposals failed to accommodate all of Russia's maximalist war demands.
The Russian leader claimed that Europe is obstructing US President Donald Trump's peace efforts and has drafted peace proposals containing points that are absolutely unacceptable to Russia. He added that Moscow will only allow Europe to return to the negotiation process if Europe accepts the realities on the ground. After the US-Russia meeting, Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov stated the European leaders are engaging in destructive actions in the peace process.
Senior Kremlin officials have repeatedly signaled in recent weeks that the Kremlin will not accept any peace agreement that does not meet Russia's maximalist demands, including the initial 28-point peace plan proposed by the United States. The Kremlin is likely setting conditions to blame Europe's addition of supposedly unacceptable points to the peace plan for Russia's refusal to accept it, essentially using Europe as a scapegoat for its own obstruction of the peace process.
The Institute for the Study of War also commented on Putin's threats toward Europe and his veiled nuclear warning.
Putin stated that Russia does not intend to fight Europe, but would be ready right now if Europe suddenly decided to wage war against Russia. He issued a barely veiled nuclear threat, claiming that if Europe starts a war with Russia, a situation would quickly arise in which Russia would have no one to negotiate with. The Kremlin's threats toward Europe are likely aimed at deterring European involvement in the peace process and undermining Europe's efforts to strengthen its defenses out of fear of supposedly provoking Russian aggression.
Following the negotiations in the Kremlin, President Zelensky's meeting in Brussels with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the White House chief's son-in-law Jared Kushner has been cancelled. Shocking information has been leaked by journalists.
The Brussels meeting is called off, according to sources. Zelensky is returning home.
It has become known that the negotiators immediately departed for Washington. The day before, they met in the Kremlin with Russian dictator Putin. The talks focused on proposals to end Russia's war against Ukraine, formed after the November 30 discussions in Florida between the Ukrainian and US delegations regarding the 28-point peace plan. Immediately after the closed-door talks, the Russian side issued a statement.
No compromise option has been found yet, but some American proposals appear more or less acceptable, though they still need to be discussed. Some of the formulations that were presented to us are not suitable for us.
According to NBC News, citing Russian sources, Russia continues to exert pressure and has no intention of backing down on three key points of Trump's peace plan regarding Ukraine. These points concern the territory of Donbass, limits on the size of the Ukrainian armed forces, and the recognition by the United States and Europe of Ukraine's occupied territories as Russian. The president of Poland is sounding the alarm and at the same time clearly states, without the key logistical hub near the Ukrainian border, Ukraine's defense would be simply impossible. During his visit to the strategic logistics hub Rzeszów, Polish President Karol Nawrocki made a series of sharp and highly important statements. The hub, which has been operating for 1,400 days, has only just regained full operational capability, after an additional 700 meters of runway were brought into service. Nawrocki emphasized that 95% of international aid from more than 40 countries reaches Ukraine through this facility. And this sounds not like a statistic, but like a warning.
This place is not only a witness to the living history of the 21st century, but also a strategic point without which it would be impossible to ensure the security of NATO's entire eastern flank.
According to him, it was the operation of the hub and the dedication of Polish society from the first days of the full-scale war that allowed Ukraine to endure. The president of Poland also added that the importance of the hub will only continue to grow, especially after the implementation of the large-scale Via Carpathia infrastructure project, which will strengthen the transport and military capabilities of the entire region.
We must secure this infrastructure, because not only Ukraine depends on it, but the security of all of Europe as well.
Razhov-Yasyonka is no longer just an airport. It is an artery through which the very possibility of Ukrainian resistance flows. And the president of Poland made it very clear, this artery must operate without interruption. The European Commission is developing a legal solution to address Belgium's concerns about providing Ukraine with a loan backed by the 140 billion euros in Russian assets frozen in Brussels. Belgium fears that if Ukraine receives 140 billion euros, a pro-Russian EU country such as Hungary or Slovakia could veto the renewal of the EU sanctions regime against Moscow. This would require Belgium to immediately return the missing billions to Russia. To eliminate this risk, the European Commission intends to use Article 122 of the EU Treaty, which allows governments to adopt decisions in a spirit of solidarity between member states regarding measures appropriate to the economic situation. The Commission's plan is to prevent individual EU countries from being able to lift sanctions, thereby depriving Hungary of a potential veto. One diplomat noted that this strategy is a way to secure Belgium's support. Steve Witkoff has once again landed in Moscow. The special envoy of Donald Trump, recently embroiled in a major scandal, arrived to present Putin with the latest version of the so-called peace plan. Before the meeting with the Kremlin leader, Russian officials treated an American guest to a carefully curated welcome. Not street food pastries this time, but a visit to a Moscow restaurant awarded a Michelin star in 2022. How Russia hosted its distinguished visitors from across the Atlantic, and whether this meeting brings the end of the war any closer, all of that ahead in our report.
The Americans have visited Russia again. They were met at Vnukovo by Putin's special representative, Kirill Dmitriev. The Kremlin is preparing to push its own version of a peace plan for Ukraine.
There is a process underway. The process is a serious one. Just now, Putin said that he would inform Lukashenko about how things stand on this track. Right now, there is probably nothing more important than this. Of course, there will be many people who won't shy away from anything to disrupt this process.
The day before, Stephen Witkoff took part in a meeting between the American delegation and representatives of Ukraine in Florida.
We don't just want to end the ongoing devastating war. We also want to actively help Ukraine achieve lasting, enduring security and a stable future so that it never, ever has to face another unprovoked invasion again in its sovereign territory. The negotiations were productive, but more work is still needed.
Some progress was noted, however, no concrete agreements were reached.
We are already halfway to ensuring Ukraine's independence. Today we made significant progress. Russia must become part of the equation for a Ukrainian settlement. To that end, Witkoff will travel to Moscow.
American journalists are speculating that this time, Trump has sent an unusual team of negotiators to Russia, Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
While the Trump administration is hastily and urgently seeking to conclude a comprehensive peace agreement to effectively end the protracted war in Ukraine, President Donald Trump is simultaneously sending two of his most senior and experienced top diplomats to Moscow for crucial discussions. They are his former business partner and his son-in-law, and neither of them has been confirmed by Senate lawmakers.
Rumor has it in the White House that with this move, Trump is showing his preference for personal diplomacy over bureaucracy. The U.S. president believes that it is Witkoff and Kushner who are supposedly capable of closing the deal.
Since the Moscow authorities are justifiably proud of what they have accomplished for the development of the capital in recent times.
Who is the negotiator on the Russian side? Putin himself spoke about this.
When we actually sit down at the negotiating table and begin to seriously and specifically discuss each of the proposed points for discussion, on our side, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is involved, and from the administration, it's Vladimir Rostislavovich Medinsky, the presidential aide. He has been handling this from the very beginning. That's right. Well, for current matters, in order to organize all this work, I have also involved my aide, Yuri Viktorovich Ushakov. He is in contact with his American counterparts, but he can't do all of this alone. This should be handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and partly by the presidential administration as well. After all, this is a large, very complex set of issues that need to be discussed, formalized, properly drafted, and all the details need to be clarified.
At the press conference, the Kremlin dictator stated that one of the key topics would be the status of Crimea and Donbas. Then he got even more inspired and blurted out, "The Russian Federation is ready to go to war with Europe."
We are not planning to go to war with Europe. I've already said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly wants to fight us and starts a war, we are ready right now.
Before Witkoff's negotiations in Moscow about the peace plan, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the issue of territories is the most difficult one.
I'll be frank, the territorial issue is the most difficult one. The issue of money and reconstruction, in my opinion, and I'm speaking honestly, of course, without the presence of European partners, is not easy and is difficult to resolve because the money is in Europe. It seems to me that this isn't very fair. And the issue of security guarantees, which is very important, specifics from the US, specifics from Europe.
According to media reports, the initial version of the plan, which consisted of 28 points, mentioned recognizing Ukrainian territories as belonging to Russia and the possibility of withdrawing the Ukrainian armed forces even from those parts of Donetsk region that the occupiers had not managed to seize. Ukraine has repeatedly called this unacceptable. European allies of Ukraine have also opposed such steps. The visit of the American envoys to discuss peace is already the sixth one. The previous visit was at the end of summer. At that time, the meeting took place against the backdrop of an ultimatum that Donald Trump issued to the Kremlin. Disappointed by the lack of progress in resolving the war in Ukraine, the head of the White House first gave Putin 50 days, then 10, to achieve a ceasefire.
We have indeed agreed upon some truly serious and significant security guarantees, which I would unequivocally describe as absolutely game-changing. We honestly never thought we would ever get so incredibly close to achieving such a crucial agreement on Article 5 protection from the United States, or to securing a firm legislative commitment within the RSF not to encroach upon any other territories whatsoever after the peace agreement is formally codified. So we have successfully reached a comprehensive agreement, and that in fact is certainly not all.
Since then, nothing has changed except for the tightening of sanctions. Putin decided to relentlessly continue his brutal conflict within the sovereign territory of Ukraine.
A new phase has begun in the Black Sea. The hunting season for Russian oil tankers is officially open. Over the past 4 days alone, 3 vessels have come under attack, 2 of which belong to Putin's so-called Shadow Fleet, a network of tankers that funneled billions into the Kremlin's war chest through covered oil shipments. Ukraine's naval drone forces are increasingly targeting the logistics lifelines of the aggressor state, turning the Black Sea into a battlefield of precision strikes. Who is behind these operations and how are they being carried out near the coast of Turkey? All of that in our upcoming report.
It seems that the Black Sea is no longer safe for Russian ships. Another tanker from Russia's so-called Shadow Fleet was attacked 80 miles off the coast of Turkey. The Medvolga II was en route from Russia to Georgia. There were 13 crew members on board, and according to Ankara, no one was injured. According to Turkey's Ministry of Transport, the damaged but still operational Medvolga II is now heading towards Sinop and is not requesting assistance.
The tanker Medvolga II reported that it was attacked 80 miles off our coast while en route from Russia to Georgia carrying a cargo of sunflower oil. Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure of Turkey.
Built in 2014, the 140-meter-long Medvolga II sails under the Russian flag and belongs to the Srednevolzhskaya shipping company. Its route, Russia-Georgia, is a typical direction for transporting agricultural products and petroleum products, which means that such a vessel automatically falls under increased scrutiny both from Ukraine and from international organizations monitoring possible schemes to circumvent oil sanctions. This attack became yet another link in the explosive series targeting the Russian Shadow Fleet. Just recently, on the other side of the Atlantic, near Dakar in Senegal, the oil tanker Mersin carrying a cargo of diesel fuel was subjected to 4 external explosions. It is known that in August of this year, the vessel visited the Russian port of Tarman and previously had repeatedly called at the port of Novorossiysk. Previously, 2 other Russian tankers under sanctions, Kera and Virat, were struck in the Black Sea by naval drones as part of a joint operation by the Security Service and the naval forces of Ukraine.
The Security Service of Ukraine continues active measures to cut off Russia's financial ability to wage war against Ukraine. The Sea Baby naval drones disabled vessels that could have transported nearly 70 million worth of oil and helped the Kremlin circumvent international sanctions, a source in the Security Service of Ukraine noted.
These vessels are also part of the so-called Shadow Fleet of the aggressor country and were used to bypass international sanctions. According to Ukrainian sources, both tankers sustained critical damage and have effectively been put out of operation.
This is Mossad's tactic. Some were sunk and the others will think 150 times before acting. That's exactly how it should be, I assure you. Until the same thing happens in the Baltic Sea, no one in Europe will take it seriously. I think it would be very appropriate to do this, for example, close to the territorial waters of Poland and the Baltic states. These people definitely won't notice anything, they'll just close their eyes and say, someone was sailing there, no we didn't see anything, we don't know, and so on. Ideally, we should be sinking them everywhere if we have the technical capability, in Vladivostok and all along the line here, so that they understand there needs to be pressure. Without sinking these ships, nothing will happen. Otherwise, no one will understand that things are serious. This is exactly how we need to act, so that once and for all they remember, you can't mess with Ukraine.
The attacks, which took place just a few dozen nautical miles from the Turkish coast, provoked a sharp reaction from Ankara. Turkish President Recep Erdogan called these events a troubling escalation of the situation.
The war between Russia and Ukraine clearly threatens the safety of shipping in the Black Sea. On Friday, there was a troubling escalation in our exclusive economic zone when merchant ships were attacked. In particular, we cannot in any way justify these attacks, which threaten the safety of navigation, lives, and the environment in our exclusive zone.
As we can see, the Russian shadow fleet can no longer feel safe anywhere. The strikes by Ukrainian naval drones as well as the high-profile attacks on tankers show that the Kremlin is losing its freedom of maneuver at sea. And every destroyed or disabled tanker is not only a financial blow to Moscow but also a serious blow to the ego of the Russian little Tsar. But that's not all. At the same time, Kyiv is striking at the rear of Mother Russia. In November, the armed forces of Ukraine attacked Russian oil refineries with drones at least 14 times. According to Bloomberg, this is a record number of strikes on Russia's strategic oil infrastructure for the entire duration of the full-scale war.
Russia's chief of the general staff has reported to Putin that Russian forces have allegedly taken control of the Ukrainian cities of Pokrovsk and Vovchansk. In Kyiv, officials reject these claims and emphasize that fighting for both locations is ongoing despite localized Russian advances. The front line remains highly dynamic and extremely tense, with the tactical situation shifting by the hour. In our military briefing ahead, we break down what is truly happening along the critical sectors of the line of contact.
On the eve of the visit by US President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, the Kremlin dictator. On the first day of winter, Putin allegedly visited one of the Russian army's command posts and announced his intention to create a security zone along the border with Ukraine in the area of responsibility of the Sever Group.
Putin doesn't know, Russians don't know, where is Vovchansk here? This is Kupiansk and Volchansk, this is one city, or different ones, and Pokrovsk. Komsomolsky, Krasnogvardeysk. Is it the same or different? No, they don't care. Vitkov was told that we would now take Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. At the meeting with the American delegation, our military came and said, here's the map. Look, this is Pokrovsk, this is Kupiansk. No way, they lied to you. He comes to Moscow and Putin tells him, sorry brother, well, not Kupiansk, Vovchansk, but we took it.
The chief of the general staff of the occupying army, Valery Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the alleged liberation of the city of Krasnoarmysk. This is what Russians call the Ukrainian Pokrovsk and Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. This information has already been refuted by the Ukrainian side.
We can say that Putin wants to present a victorious victory that in reality does not exist. Since he lied about Russian troops capturing Pokrovsk, he keeps lying all the time. As for Kupiansk, where the situation is actually unfolding not in favor of the Russian army, and this should be especially noted, we are driving the enemy out of that city. Why did he claim that Pokrovsk was taken, that Pokrovsk was captured? Because what happened there was yet another flag planting under the cover of fog. Russian troops planted their flag there, took a photo of it, posted it on social media, and basically this made its way up the chain and gave Putin grounds to claim that Pokrovsk had been captured. Then of course the flag was taken down, but as they say, the information had already spread.
The occupiers also made a statement about an offensive in the Dnipropetrovsk region and the start of an operation to liberate Huliaipol.
In response to our reinforcement in the north, the enemy is deploying additional reserves. Obviously, the brigades they are now deploying are the ones that were supposed to be in the second echelon to build on their success. This means their reserves are not unlimited.
According to Deep State, the Russian army has advanced in Pokrovsk and near Mirnohrad. There was also a breakthrough in Stepnohirsk on the Zaporizhzhia front. Yesterday, the head of the Russian General Staff, Gerasimov, claimed that Stepnohirsk was encircled. I
I understand that Putin is constantly being misinformed by his own generals about the real situation. They embellish the situation at the front. They seize territories on credit, but then it turns out that the enemy is already launching counterattacks, trying to make reality fit the reports.
Upon returning to the Kremlin, Putin demonstratively held another meeting with the governor of the Kursk region. They discussed people displaced from the border regions of the Kursk region.
Such disinformation, of course, could be linked to Vitov's visit. Of course, this will be fed into his ear. I'm very afraid that this will then make its way to Washington and result in yet another round of pressure on Ukraine. As if to say, you'll soon lose everything anyway. Donbass, since Putin has taken Pokrovsk in quotes, taken Kupiansk in quotes, and you will continue to lose territory further on. So go along with the terms of the peace agreement being offered to you, because it will only get worse later.
Despite the lull in the information space, actual fighting continues in the Sumy direction.
The scale of the confrontation there is smaller because the Russians here have redeployed their main forces to those same Marine brigades. They need them badly near Pokrovsk and in the Kostiantynivka direction. But we too have been forced to reduce the number of our forces.
Kherson, the Russian army is still fighting against the civilian population. There, the occupiers hunt down every unarmed person who can't escape from a drone or a KAB bomb.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.